Section 43 of Scott's Last Expedition, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Scott's Last Expedition, Volume 1, The Journals of Robert Falcon Scott, arranged by Leonard Huxley. Second part of Chapter 20, The Last March. Saturday, March 3rd, lunch. We picked up the track again yesterday, finding ourselves to the eastward. Did close on 10 miles, and things looked a trifle better, but this morning the outlook is blacker than ever. Started well and with good breeze. For an hour made good headway. Then the surface grew awful beyond words. The wind drew forward. Every circumstance was against us. After 4 1/4 hours, things so bad that we camped, having covered 4 1/2 miles. Record 46. One cannot consider this a fault of our own. Certainly we were pulling hard this morning. It was more than 3 parts surface which held us back. The wind at strongest, powerless to move the sledge. When the light is good it is easy to see the reason. The surface, lately a very good hard one, is coated with a thin layer of woolly crystals, formed by radiation, no doubt. These are too firmly fixed to be removed by the wind, and cause impossible friction on the runners. God help us, we can't keep up this pulling, that is certain. Amongst ourselves we are unendingly cheerful, but what each man feels in his heart I can only guess. Pulling on foot gear in the morning is getting slower and slower, therefore every day more dangerous. Sunday, March 4. Lunch. Things looking very black indeed. As usual we forgot our trouble last night, got into our bags, slept splendidly on good hoosh, woke and had another, and started marching. Sun shining brightly, tracks clear, but surface covered with sandy frost rime. All the morning we had to pull with all our strength, and in 4 1/2 hours we covered 3 1/2 miles. Last night it was overcast and thick, surface bad. This morning sun shining and surface as bad as ever. One has little to hope for except perhaps strong dry wind, an unlikely contingency at this time of year. Under the immediate surface crystals is a hard sastrugi surface, which must have been excellent for pulling a week or two ago. We are about 42 miles from the next depot, and have a week's food, but only about 3 to 4 days' fuel. We are as economical of the latter as one can possibly be, and we cannot afford to save food and pull as we are pulling. We are in a very tight place indeed, but none of us is despondent yet, or at least we preserve every semblance of good cheer, but one's heart sinks as the sledge stops dead at some sastrugi behind which the surface sand lies thickly heaped. For the moment the temperature is on the –20°, an improvement which makes us much more comfortable, but a colder snap is bound to come again soon. I fear that Oates, at least, will weather such an event very poorly. Providence to our aid! We can expect little from man now except the possibility of extra food at the next depot. It will be real bad if we get there and find the same shortage of oil. Shall we get there? Such a short distance it would have appeared to us on the summit. I don't know what I should do if Wilson and Bowers weren't so determinately cheerful over things. Monday, March 5. Lunch. Regret to say going from bad to worse. We got a slant of wind yesterday afternoon, and going on 5 hours we converted our wretched morning run of 3 1/2 miles into something over 9. We went to bed on a cup of cocoa and pemmican solid with the chill off. Record 47. The result is telling on all, but mainly on Oates, whose feet are in a wretched condition. One swelled up tremendously last night and he is very lame this morning. We started march on tea and pemmican as last night. We pretend to prefer the pemmican this way. Marched for 5 hours this morning over a slightly better surface covered with high moundy sastrugi. Sledge capsized twice. We pulled on foot, covering about 5 1/2 miles. We are 2 pony marches and 4 miles about from our depot. Our fuel dreadfully low and the poor soldier nearly done. It is pathetic enough because we can do nothing for him. More hot food might do a little, but only a little, I fear. We none of us expected these terribly low temperatures, and of the rest of us Wilson is feeling them most, mainly, I fear, from his self-sacrificing devotion in doctoring Oates' feet. We cannot help each other, each has enough to do to take care of himself. We get cold on the march when the trudging is heavy and the wind pierces our warm garments. The others, all of them, are unendingly cheerful when in the tent. We mean to see the game through with a proper spirit, but it's tough work to be pulling harder than we ever pulled in our lives for long hours, and to feel that the progress is so slow. One can only say, God help us, and plod on our weary way, cold and very miserable, though outwardly cheerful. We talk of all sorts of subjects in the tent, not much of food now, since we decided to take the risk of running a full ration. We simply couldn't go hungry at this time. Tuesday, March 6. Lunch. We did a little better with help of wind yesterday afternoon, finishing 9 1/2 miles for the day and 27 miles from depot (record 48). But this morning things have been awful. It was warm in the night and for the first time during the journey I overslept myself by more than an hour. Then we were slow with foot gear; then, pulling with all our might, for our lives, we could scarcely advance at rate of a mile an hour. Then it grew thick and 3 times we had to get out of harness to search for tracks. The result is something less than 3 1/2 miles for the forenoon. The sun is shining now and the wind gone. Poor Oates is unable to pull, sits on the sledge when we are track searching. He is wonderfully plucky, as his feet must be giving him great pain. He makes no complaint, but his spirits only come up in spurts now, and he grows more silent in the tent. We are making a spirit lamp to try and replace the Primus when our oil is exhausted. It will be a very poor substitute, and we've not got much spirit. If we could have kept up our 9-mile days we might have got within reasonable distance of the depot before running out, but nothing but a strong wind and good surface can help us now, and though we had quite a good breeze this morning, the sledge came as heavy as lead. If we were all fit I should have hopes of getting through, but the poor soldier has become a terrible hindrance, though he does his utmost and suffers much I fear. Wednesday, March 7. A little worse I fear. One of Oates' feet very bad this morning. He is wonderfully brave. We still talk of what we will do together at home. We only made 6 1/2 miles yesterday (record 49). This morning in 4 1/2 hours we did just over 4 miles. We are 16 from our depot. If we only find the correct proportion of food there, and this surface continues, we may get to the next depot, Mt. Hooper, 72 miles farther, but not to One Ton Camp. We hope against hope that the dogs have been to Mt. Hooper. Then we might pull through. If there is a shortage of oil again, we can have little hope. One feels that for poor Oates the crisis is near, but none of us are improving, though we are wonderfully fit considering the really excessive work we are doing. We are only kept going by good food. No wind this morning till a chill northerly air came ahead. Sun bright and cairns showing up well. I should like to keep the track to the end. Thursday, March 8. Lunch. Worse and worse in morning. Poor Oates' left foot can never last out, and time over foot gear something awful. Have to wait in night foot gear for nearly an hour before I start changing, and then am generally first to be ready. Wilson's feet giving trouble now, but this mainly because he gives so much help to others. We did 4 1/2 miles this morning and are now 8 1/2 miles from the depot. A ridiculously small distance to feel in difficulties, yet on this surface we know we cannot equal half our old marches, and that for that effort we expend nearly double the energy. The great question is, what shall we find at the depot? If the dogs have visited it, we may get along a good distance, but if there is another short allowance of fuel, God help us indeed. We are in a very bad way, I fear, in any case. Saturday, March 10. Things steadily downhill. Oates' foot worse. He has rare pluck and must know that he can never get through. He asked Wilson if he had a chance this morning, and of course Bill had to say he didn't know. In point of fact, he has none. Apart from him, if he went under now, I doubt whether we could get through. With great care we might have a dog's chance, but no more. The weather conditions are awful, and our gear gets steadily more icy and difficult to manage. At the same time, of course, poor Titus is the greatest handicap. He keeps us waiting in the morning until we have partly lost the warming effect of our good breakfast, when the only wise policy is to be up and away at once. Again at lunch. Poor chap! It is too pathetic to watch him; one cannot but try to cheer him up. Yesterday we marched up the depot, Mt. Hooper. Cold comfort. Shortage on our allowance all round. I don't know that anyone is to blame. The dogs which would have been our salvation have evidently failed. Footnote: For the last 6 days the dogs had been waiting at One Ton Camp under Cherry Garrard and Demetri. The supporting party had come out as arranged on the chance of hurrying the Pole travelers back over the last stages of their journey in time to catch the ship. Scott had dated his probable return to Hut Point anywhere between mid-March and early April. Calculating from the speed of the other return parties, Dr. Atkinson looked for him to reach One Ton Camp between March 3 and 10. Here Cherry Garrard met 4 days of blizzard. Then there remained little more than enough dog food to bring the teams home. He could either push south one more march and back, at imminent risk of missing Scott on the way, or stay 2 days at the camp where Scott was bound to come, if he came at all. His wise decision, his hardships and endurance are recounted by Dr. Atkinson in Vol. II, The Last Year at Cape Evans. Meares had a bad trip home, I suppose. This morning it was calm when we breakfasted, but the wind came from west-northwest as we broke camp. It rapidly grew in strength. After traveling for half an hour I saw that none of us could go on facing such conditions. We were forced to camp and are spending the rest of the day in a comfortless blizzard camp, wind quite foul. Record 52. Sunday, March 11. Titus Oates is very near the end, one feels. What we or he will do, God only knows. We discussed the matter after breakfast. He is a brave fine fellow and understands the situation, but he practically asked for advice. Nothing could be said but to urge him to march as long as he could. One satisfactory result to the discussion, I practically ordered Wilson to hand over the means of ending our troubles to us, so that any one of us may know how to do so. Wilson had no choice between doing so and our ransacking the medicine case. We have 30 opium tabloids apiece, and he is left with a tube of morphine. So far the tragical side of our story. Record 53. The sky completely overcast when we started this morning. We could see nothing, lost the tracks, and doubtless have been swaying a good deal since. 3.1 miles for the forenoon. Terribly heavy dragging. Expected it. Know that 6 miles is about the limit of our endurance now, if we get no help from wind or surfaces. We have 7 days' food and should be about 55 miles from One Ton Camp tonight, 6 times 7 equals 42, leaving us 13 miles short of our distance, even if things get no worse. Meanwhile the season rapidly advances. Monday, March 12. We did 6.9 miles yesterday, under our necessary average. Things are left much the same, Oates not pulling much, and now with hands as well as feet pretty well useless. We did 4 miles this morning in 4 hours 20 minutes. We may hope for 3 this afternoon, 7 times 6 equals 42. We shall be 47 miles from the depot. I doubt if we can possibly do it. The surface remains awful, the cold intense, and our physical condition running down. God help us! Not a breath of favourable wind for more than a week, and apparently liable to head winds at any moment. Wednesday, March 14. No doubt about the going downhill, but everything going wrong for us. Yesterday we woke to a strong northerly wind with temperature minus 37 degrees. Couldn't face it, so remained in camp (record 54) till 2, then did 5 1/4 miles. Wanted to march later, but party feeling the cold badly as the breeze (north) never took off entirely, and as the sun sank the temperature fell. Long time getting supper in dark. Record 55. This morning started with southerly breeze, set sail and passed another cairn at good speed. Half way, however, the wind shifted to west by south or west-southwest, blew through our wind clothes and into our mitts. Poor Wilson, horribly cold, could not get off ski for some time. Bowers and I practically made camp, and when we got into the tent at last we were all deadly cold. Then temperature, now midday down 43° and the wind strong. We must go on, but how the making of every camp must be more difficult and dangerous. It must be near the end, but a pretty merciful end. Poor Oates got it again in the foot. I shudder to think what it will be like to morrow. It is only with greatest pains rest of us keep off frost bites. No idea there could be temperatures like this at this time of year with such winds. Truly awful outside the tent. Must fight it out to the last biscuit, but can't reduce rations. Friday, March 16, or Saturday, 17. Lost track of dates, but think the last correct. Tragedy all along the line. At lunch, the day before yesterday, poor Titus Oates said he couldn't go on. He proposed we should leave him in his sleeping bag. That we could not do, and induced him to come on the afternoon march. In spite of its awful nature for him, he struggled on and we made a few miles. At night he was worse and we knew the end had come. Should this be found I want these facts recorded. Oates' last thoughts were of his mother, but immediately before he took pride in thinking that his regiment would be pleased with the bold way in which he met his death. We can testify to his bravery. He has borne intense suffering for weeks without complaint, and to the very last was able and willing to discuss outside subjects. He did not, would not, give up hope to the very end. He was a brave soul. This was the end. He slept through the night before last, hoping not to wake. But he woke in the morning, yesterday. It was blowing a blizzard. He said, "I am just going outside and may be some time." He went out into the blizzard and we have not seen him since. I take this opportunity of saying that we have stuck to our sick companions to the last. In case of Edgar Evans, when absolutely out of food and he lay insensible, the safety of the remainder seemed to demand his abandonment, but Providence mercifully removed him at this critical moment. He died a natural death, and we did not leave him till 2 hours after his death. We knew that poor Oates was walking to his death, but though we tried to dissuade him, we knew it was the act of a brave man and an English gentleman. We all hope to meet the end with a similar spirit, and assuredly the end is not far. I can only write at lunch and then only occasionally. The cold is intense, 40° at midday. My companions are unendingly cheerful, but we are all on the verge of serious frost bites, and though we constantly talk of fetching through, I don't think any one of us believes it in his heart. We are cold on the march now, and at all times except meals. Yesterday we had to lay up for a blizzard, and to day we move dreadfully slowly. We are at No. 14 Pony Camp, only 2 pony marches from One Ton Depot. We leave here our theodolite, a camera, and Oates' sleeping bags. Diaries, etc., and geological specimens carried at Wilson's special request, will be found with us or on our sledge. Sunday, March 18. To day, lunch, we are 21 miles from the depot. Ill fortune presses, but better may come. We have had more wind and drift from ahead yesterday, had to stop marching. Wind northwest, force 4, temperature 35°. No human being could face it, and we are worn out nearly. My right foot has gone, nearly all the toes. 2 days ago I was proud possessor of best feet. These are the steps of my downfall. Like an ass I mixed a small spoonful of curry powder with my melted pemmican. It gave me violent indigestion. I lay awake and in pain all night. Woke and felt done on the march. Foot went and I didn't know it. A very small measure of neglect and have a foot which is not pleasant to contemplate. Bowers takes first place in condition, but there is not much to choose after all. The others are still confident of getting through, or pretend to be, I don't know. We have the last half fill of oil in our primus and a very small quantity of spirit, this alone between us and thirst. The wind is fair for the moment, and that is perhaps a fact to help. The mileage would have seemed ridiculously small on our outward journey. Monday, March 19. Lunch. We camped with difficulty last night, and were dreadfully cold till our supper of cold pemmican and biscuit and half a pannikin of cocoa cooked over the spirit. Then, contrary to expectation, we got warm and all slept well. To day we started in the usual dragging manner. Sledge dreadfully heavy. We are 15 1/2 miles from the depot and ought to get there in 3 days. What progress! We have 2 days' food but barely a day's fuel. All our feet are getting bad, Wilson's best, my right foot worst, left all right. There is no chance to nurse one's feet till we can get hot food into us. Amputation is the least I can hope for now, but will the trouble spread? That is the serious question. The weather doesn't give us a chance. The wind from north to northwest, and –40° temperature to day. Wednesday, March 21. Got within 11 miles of depot Monday night. Footnote: the 60th camp from the Pole. Had to lay up all yesterday in severe blizzard. Footnote: the fatal blizzard. Mr. Frank Wild, who led one wing of Dr. Mawson's expedition on the northern coast of the Antarctic continent, Queen Mary's Land, many miles to the west of the Ross Sea, writes that "from March 21 for a period of 9 days we were kept in camp by the same blizzard which proved fatal to Scott and his gallant companions." Times, June 2, 1913. Blizzards, however, are so local that even when, as in this case, two are nearly contemporaneous, it is not safe to conclude that they are part of the same current of air. To day forlorn hope, Wilson and Bowers going to depot for fuel. Thursday, March 22 and 23. Blizzard bad as ever. Wilson and Bowers unable to start. To morrow last chance. No fuel and only 1 or 2 of food left. Must be near the end. Have decided it shall be natural. We shall march for the depot with or without our effects and die in our tracks. Thursday, March 29. Since the 21st we have had a continuous gale from W.S.W. and S.W. We had fuel to make 2 cups of tea apiece, and bare food for 2 days on the 20th. Every day we have been ready to start for our depot, 11 miles away, but outside the door of the tent it remains a scene of whirling drift. I do not think we can hope for any better things now. We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more. R. Scott. For God's sake, look after our people. Wilson and Bowers were found in the attitude of sleep, their sleeping bags closed over their heads as they would naturally close them. Scott died later. He had thrown back the flaps of his sleeping bag and opened his coat. The little wallet containing the 3 notebooks was under his shoulders and his arm flung across Wilson. So they were found 8 months later. End of second part of Chapter 20.